Hi, I made a very generic, childish-like drawing of how electricity is generated at the power plant. That way you can understand the difference between regular electricity generation, like Bowen, for example, steam plant, versus nuclear electricity generation like Vogel, which is Georgia's nuclear power plant. So a long time ago, Michael Faraday discovered that magnets plus copper wire plus motion equals electricity. So based on that very simple concept, they figured out that there's a process that they have to follow. So the first thing that they do is pull water off a nearby water source, typically a river. All power plants are built near a river. And they pull off huge amounts of water in order to create steam. So what do they use to heat the water with that creates this steam? Well, in a regular electricity generation plant like Bowen, they use coal, fossil fuels. Coal is the only thing that they put it on a conveyor belt and they keep it running so that it can be added to the pile of what's burning. But it's the only thing that they can find that burns hot enough to generate the massive amounts of steam that they need to generate electricity. And if it is a nuclear power plant like Vogel, they use a couple of pieces of uranium to do the same thing. So once all this massive amounts of steam is created, there are these huge fan-looking items like turbines, and the turbines create the motion part of what you need to generate electricity. So the water is pulled in, it is heated up by either coal or uranium, depending on which plant it's in, and it creates a lot of steam that turns these turbines. Now these turbines are hooked up by a rod to these generators, huge, incredibly large generators. And inside the generator, you have copper wire, which is surrounded by magnets. And so what happens is, and here's the second part, the three parts you have to have for electricity: magnets, copper wire, and motion. So the steam turns the turbine then turns the copper that's inside the generator, and you have your magnets surrounding it. So the steam turns the turbines, which turns the rod inside the generator, and the rod is made of copper wire surrounded by magnets. Well, when you have motion and when you have copper and that copper spinning and magnets, you get electricity. Now this electric current, and we're talking about many currents of electricity at a power plant. I mean, they power schools, they power everything, your houses. But the way it works is once the electricity is generated, voltage is a pressure that is created by this turning, and that voltage or pressure pushes it all the way to your house, school, grocery store, etc. So the only difference between a regular electricity plant or generation and nuclear electricity generation is that the regular uses fossil fuel or coal to heat the water, while nuclear uses uranium. So last thing, you have to have magnets, copper wire, and motion to produce electricity. We're talking about electricity that's produced in huge amounts. So they build the plant near the water, they pull off the water, they heat it up, creates huge amounts of steam that's funneled through the turbines, which turns the turbines, and then the turbines turn the copper rods inside the generator that's surrounded by magnets. And when you get that, voila, you have electricity, which is then pushed out by voltage to your house, etc. So that is a review, a very quick review of how electricity is generated. And again, you should focus on the fact that the only difference between regular power plants and nuclear is that regular power plants use huge amounts of a non-renewable resource like coal to heat the water, and then a nuclear power plant uses, 3 to 5 pellets can make enough electricity for tons and tons and tons of coal. So there's your difference.